Okay, everyone, like this is me on the drums.
Oh, get out. It is not.
It is so.
Stop
I
lying, will you?
Good evening. Sorry I'm running a few minutes late tonight. So since Saturday Night Live did their first live show, sort of live show from home, figured I'd do a couple of some Saturday Night Live alumni and Saturday Night Live comedy albums. And then some people who are associated with Saturday Night Live. So we're listening to Bob and Doug McKenzie. They're not directly related, but they were SCTV.
So that's our topic for today. So good day.
Good day. Hey, don't go. No,
Uh,
look what you did. Everybody's going.
Anyway, sorry. So Bob and Doug McKenzie, not directly related to Saturday Night Live, but they were SCTV. And came out of the last stuff in Second City Television and Second City Chicago, where a lot of Saturday Night Live alumni came from, and had a hit with this song with Geddy Lee of Rush. And they've actually written quite a bit for a lot of things. Rick Moranis did a lot, several Disney films, and it's quite interesting projects. All right.
Do another one, maybe.
Take a little bit about, well, let's start with this album here. So here's the Saturday Night Live cast album. Came out right after the first season. And it was very much kind of in Monty Python-esque. Had a lot of skits from the original series. I think some of it was lifted directly from tapes from the show. But it had the original 7 there. Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, Chevy Chase, Jane Curtin, Garrett Morris, Lorraine Newman, and Gilda Radner. So then, like I said, a lot of skits just lifted directly from the original first season of Saturday Night Live. And they got a sign, interesting, they were on Arista Records as well, which is where Monty Python ended up in the U.S. All right. And we have Don Novella, who did Father Guido Sarducci. Actually did 2 albums, comedy albums, after Saturday Night Live. Before Saturday Night Live, he actually wrote for the Smothers Brothers. He also wrote a couple books where he used the synonym and wrote really long, bizarre letters to famous people. And then once he got the replies, he put the books together, and some of them are really bizarre and a lot of fun. But he's a longtime writer for Saturday Night Live and a lot of other shows, and creative consultant on a lot of things. But Don Novella was always an interesting person. And Gilda Radner, this was after she left Saturday Night Live. She did a one-woman Broadway play. Paul Schaefer, I believe, was the musical director, along with Howard Shore, both from Saturday Night Live. And she did all of her characters and did a one-woman play with a lot of singing and dancing and a little bit of acting, but it was fairly musical. Candy Slice and the Slicers, Gimme Mick, The Audition. The best song on here, at least I think, got a lot of airplay, was at least got some comedy airplay on TV shows. Was Let's Talk Dirty to the Animals, still a favorite, and I won't be able to play it on the air here. I'm sure they would shut me down. Let's see. This is the Count Floyd EP. Was Joe Flaherty, another Saturday Night Live alumni. And he did a lot of SCTV alumni. Did a lot of writing, but this was a character he did on SCTV. And there's actually a song on here that people who know me in my Christmas collections have heard many a time. I think I have it on CD somewhere here, but this is where I originally got it. Reggae Christmas in Transylvania. One of my favorite tracks.
Oh, come on, fellas. What was that?
We can wipe that with welfare.
No, you don't. You're not wiping
And
it.
there is
Leave
Billy
that.
Crystal. Right after his stint on Saturday Night Live, he did
All right, gentlemen. Let's hear it again.
he did a comedy album. He had did a track called "You Look Marvelous," which actually was arranged by Paul Schaefer. But he did a lot of stuff with Christopher Guest, who went on to do did a lot of writing on National Lampoon Radio, but now ended up when it was on Saturday Night Live. Did a lot of stuff with Billy Crystal, and had a couple of weird little singles. And we'll go through a couple of National Lampoon albums. Well, a lot of people from National Lampoon ended up writing on SNL. Mike Donahue, a lot of producers. Bob Tischer was involved. But a lot of National Lampoon Radio, a lot of it got reworked onto Saturday Night Live after the first couple of years. This is kind of the quintessential National Lampoon Lemmings. It's pretty much a whole mock thing of Woodstock. Another interesting thing there on the Lemmings album was that they Christopher Kerf wrote a lot of songs he wrote for National Lampoon Radio. He ended up in the late 70s and through the 80s and 90s writing most of the parodies for Sesame Street. So all the goofy parodies came from gentlemen from National Lampoon Radio, and he worked a lot of adult themes to that. Tony Hendra, another person who wrote a lot of Saturday Night Live. Christopher Guest, who actually, my understanding is he would just go into the booth and just randomly they would let him go, and he would record his things pretty much improv off the top of his head, a lot like he ended up doing when he started doing movies like Spinal Tap. Deteriorate, Save the Whales. They did a lot of musical parodies here. Again, Christopher Guest did a lot of lead vocals. Kung Fu Christmas. Mr. Roberts was always a fun one. Bill Murray was involved here before he went to Saturday Night Live.
Ladies and gentlemen, because of bad weather, the Rolling Stones will not be here tonight. In their place,
Cast
we
album.
please welcome Count Floyd.
And then later on, some of the artists, there's Dennis Miller's album, kind of a takeoff of the White Album, when he actually just did a stand-up bit after he left SNL, similar to what he still does today. But he didn't work hard on his album art. This came out during Saturday Night Live's work. Tom Scott and Chevy Chase. Tom Scott, of course, ended up involved with the Blues Brothers. Steve Gadd. He had a lot of musicians, and he actually had a background in music. So he did actually play on some of this and sing. And it's actually some pretty well-known songs. And let's see. Let's throw it in the middle there, see what kind of sound it has. But it is Chevy Chase singing. There's a shot of Chevy Chase as a young man.
Wild thing, you make my heart sing.
And there's Albert Brooks and Harry Shearer. Albert Brooks did a lot of very interesting movies afterwards, but he was involved in the early times during Saturday Night Live, and he, I believe he is related to Mel Brooks. I'm not exactly sure how, but like a cousin. But he worked with Harry Shearer, who ended up in Spinal Tap and does a lot of radio still today. But Albert Brooks made all the short films the first couple of seasons of Saturday Night Live, and they were always very kind of off the wall. And we're going to finish up with two albums, Lenny and Squiggy. They made this. They have some ties to Saturday Night Live, mainly because there's the band here with all made up names, of course. Interesting thing about this is Honey and Squiggy were in the band along with their guitarist, which was Christopher Guest, who was already using the name Nigel Tufnell a couple years before they did Spinal Tap. He was already working that out. Had the whole thing, and I believe they even went on American Bandstand and did American Legion of Love in character. And we're gonna finish off with this. Some of my friends from Carbondale remember this. I picked this up somewhere cheap. It's one of my favorite albums still to this day. The Credibility Gap. They were a radio show. Again, they had some ties because they had Harry Shearer, David Linder, and Michael McKean and Richard Beebe. I don't know much about them, but they ended up doing 3 albums. Very much 70s radio skit comedy. A little slower than today's comedy, but it's can show early things of parody and improv that worked into Spinal Tap and the other shows that they worked on. The favorite said definitely a product of its time. That's what I got for tonight on SNL. If people have questions or if you want to hear me talk about something else, maybe I'll start pulling out some more traditional rock and talk what I know about that. And if you have questions or if you have ideas for things you'd like to hear me go on about, I can ramble quite a bit. I know more trivia than I should, but I know a lot of my friends out there know even more. You're always welcome to chime in here on the chat thing here on Facebook. Again, thanks for listening. Everyone stay safe. Thanks to all the healthcare workers, and we will see you tomorrow night. Take care.
Rudy, kazooty, tutti, fruity, all Rudy. Skip to my loo. Sock it to me, ziggity boom. A wop bop a loo, I'm talking to you. Well, welcome, Jim. You're in the house of Slim, and I'm happy to say that's me. Dig, the party don't stop if you wanna bop. I got uppers, downers, LSD. Don't be low, have a blow, a little get up and go. Joe, have yourself a little freeze. A toot for the snoot if you wanna.